Sound on? Good morning, everyone. Well, it's a year since I've done my last creations program, and I asked God this year, at the beginning of the year, what topic should I do for this year, thinking well ahead. And He put the subject of ancient civilizations on my heart. And then when I started, I thought, oh no, it was so difficult. And there was so much to it, and there was so much I didn't know. The Bible wasn't a lot of help, because from the flood to the Tower of Babel, it was one page. And that's where most of the things happen. And I went to Ellen White and I studied everything I could from her. I learnt a fair bit, but it still wasn't enough. And I thought, oh, why do I have to do this? And quite a few years ago, I was given this book during COVID, Dead Man's Secrets. Jonathan Gray and Wayne, he's here today, and he was an expert in this, and he told me a couple of things that happened, and I thought, that is absolutely preposterous. It's ridiculous. I'm not reading that book. I don't believe that. That's ridiculous. So I closed my mind, and I'm ashamed to say it, and I wouldn't read the book. I read a lot of other Jonathans about Noah's Ark and all sorts of I studied right through COVID, but I wouldn't read this book. And so at the beginning of the year, this book came into my mind, and I thought, oh no. And I couldn't find it. I finally found it on Kindle, but I couldn't mark it. So I finally found it, and I started reading it. And it was incredible. But the first time I read it, it was gobbledygook. My brain wasn't ready for it. So it was at least 3 or 4 times I had to read it. And then the study started in February. And it's now October. A few weeks ago, I thought, no, this is too much. It's too controversial. It's just too much for my brain. I'm going to cancel. And then I thought, no, because I believed that ancient Egypt, I'd been on a Bible and Reformation tour, that's where history started after the flood. And I found out, no, that's the known history in yellow. All the actions well before that. And I thought, but where is it? And then I discovered people are getting technically advanced now, and they have LiDAR and all this sonar, and they can fly over jungles, they can fly over deserts, they can go anywhere, and they can see under the earth. You don't need a shovel anymore. And they're finding amazing, amazing things. So I forgot to say, when I started, I've been doing this for so many years, and beautiful Brenda is here. She used to help me in Port Macquarie. We had creation lessons, and people came from Melbourne once a month, would you believe? From right up Walker. They came from all over, and they wanted their children grounded in creation. And so they realised how important it was. So I started doing it, and Ken Ham, he rang me, when Ken Ham from Answers in Genesis and the Ark and that in America, he rang me for 90 minutes and told me, he heard I was going to do creation and congratulated me and said, but you have to have a strong backbone, because the devil hates this most of all because it's the very foundation, the beginning of the Bible, the first 11 chapters. And he hates this most, and he will do everything to destroy you. You will be under attack. It's going to be very difficult, so you have to have a backbone. So I learnt that. The very first lesson I did on the Ice Age, 2 beautiful gentlemen in the church I was at, last church, they came up and cornered me after a luncheon and tore strips off me for teaching heresy. how dare you, we're telling the brethren all about you. And I thought, that's what Ken Ham's talking about. And I would never teach children any heresy or anything I didn't believe in. So I said, I want the highest authority in the world for creation, and I'll write to them, and if they pass what I'm doing, I will go ahead. Girls, first of all, I've done this for many years. Could the children sit with their parents? This is an extremely important topic, and I used to have dozens of children, and they all listened, because Ellen White said, the young people are going to take the message at the last time. The young people, so it's very important for the young people to listen and learn. You will learn a lot. So I started the creation, and they backed me at the GC, and they said, yes, you're right. So Justin got all the people in the conference to sit down and watch Ice Age videos and all the stuff I was teaching, so I wouldn't get attacked again. So we didn't ever get to this one. So with the children last time, I talked about the 7 C's of history. He found it easier to divide the entire Bible into 7 things starting with C. Creation, then corruption, that's the fall. Those 2 go together, and then catastrophe, the flood. Creation, corruption, they're together, then catastrophe, the flood, then confusion, and then we go right over. Christ didn't come to here where the Romans were. Christ, the cross, and then consummation, heaven. So if you divide it up, this chart is not in total perspective. It didn't fit the computer, and I can't do things on computers like charts. I'm a kindergarten and an infants teacher. I do everything by hand. So I had to have a few scrubbed out and start again. So that is known history, and this yellow is the history we know. This is all the history we have not been taught, and it's in the first few pages of the Bible. And it's really, really important. And why it's important, all these scientists and archaeologists and diggers and all these people, all these are going out and finding stuff up the ground, and they can't find out where it fits. We as a church are the only ones who have Ellen White's writings who talk about the beginning. So we are the only ones who know about the beginning, of how clever the people are. Everyone else is thinking, where did they come from? There's millions of years, we came from monkeys. Where do we all fit it in? And they are coming up with the most outrageous things. If you children are going to school, you need to be able to tell your friends. You need to listen and learn. And I have made up a booklet because I know you will get information overload, and nothing they plan to do will be impossible. It's in Genesis. You will see just how clever. There's pages and pages. This wasn't made just recently. It was made a few years ago. But this has the information in. They don't mention acoustic levitation. They mention they move things by sound. And in the back, I have a page of DVDs I found. That's just a few. I have spent hours and hours and hours. As soon as it gets to the rubbish about at the beginning where we come from, I switch it off. But that's only a few. And then I have put 2 booklets in, Ancient Civilizations and the History of the Aboriginals. And the more you study here, you'll realise the Aborigines weren't the first civilization. Far from it. They didn't even invent a wheel. So we are being taught, the kids at school are being taught rubbish, and children can learn. I've had 5-year-olds remember this. So I'll start, it's going to be long. I tried to cut it short. I'll go on a fast trip. Now, the main thing we must remember is what Solomon said. We've got to keep coming back to there. There's no new thing under the sun. Everything they find today was back then. Everything. Atomic warfare. Everything we have today, they had. Is there anything where it may be say this is new? It has been already of old times, which was before us. There is no remembrance. That's why you don't know. We've forgotten. Neither will there be any remembrance of things that are to come for those who come after. So none of us will remember. And remember, our brain is like the size of a walnut to a big watermelon to their brain. Remember, we use 10% of our brain. They used 100%. We have 100 new mutations every generation. We are going downhill so rapidly, perfect in the beginning. And Ellen White said, even though they lived to a great age, many over 900, their mental continue to increase in knowledge. So imagine how clever a scientist works these days. My brother was a top scientist. He worked for 30 years. Imagine if he worked for 900 or 800 years. Imagine, with a complete brain, what he could have invented. Ellen White said, compared to the people back then, we are feeble. That was a brilliant word. I won't go and read all these because if you want to look at this again, you can read them. And the first resurrection, those will come up giant-like, we won't. And there were very large animals before the flood, but she made sure they didn't keep living because we couldn't have controlled them. They were at least double our size, at least, and strong and fully formed. There's shows you before the flood. Methuselah 969, and his name meant, when he dies, it shall come. So he lived before. I can't believe how there'd be really good men and their sons do evil before the Lord, and then the next one would do good. And you can see down how the ages shrunk. We think we're clever, we're pipsqueaks. That's a bit exaggerated, but I know they were very tall. Adam was at least 14 feet tall, and in Adam's grave, his wife, it was a huge coffin. And the animals, they had to be more oxygen because the large dinosaurs, they would need more oxygen than we have in the atmosphere today. Look at it compared to a horse. Our animals today, the little ones, they're not babies. They're the little ones. Look at that, how big. They find in Central Australia huge, big animals, kangaroos and things that were. Look at the dragonflies. But Ellen White said the trees were at least double the size. They were far more magnificent. Any tree we had, they didn't die. The wood didn't have tree rings. The grain was really fine and it was really hard. And that's why it took so long to build the ark. It was like stone. Everything, she said, there were no jagged cliffs, there were beautiful mountains, and there was flowers and trees. It was just magnificent. Heaven is going to be the most incredible place. And straight after the flood, we know what it was like before the flood, when they've discovered now what was after the flood. They must have, They got to at least 1 billion people before the flood. They must have been bad. They only lasted 1,500 years. And there was nothing they couldn't do. They flew everywhere. They had civilizations on Mars. There she is. She's lost it. When I first read it, I just couldn't comprehend this. I couldn't work it out, but the more I learnt, they were just incredible. Our brains cannot compute this. Our brains, it took me all year to get this sorted. My husband knows all about it because we're in our little granny flat now and he can't escape to another room, so he's had to sit at the same table and listen to me say, "Can you believe this?" And he'd say, "Why haven't we been told?" The things I've found out, I think, why don't we know? We hear if there's a supposed fossil about something a monkey turning into a human, but they never tell us these things. There's so much corruption and so many lies, it's hard to believe anyone these days. And they had to map the world. The world before the flood was one big landmass, and it had all the gems and all the things they needed, gold, silver, everything. And they had it mapped. Now, if they could build incredible buildings, Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel. They had those two first. Cain killed Abel. Where'd Cain get his wife from? Adam and Eve had at least 35 children. Women can have children for about 30 years these days. They had them for the minimum of 400 years. So you got 400 years to have your family at least. So they would imagine how many, and they must have bred so fast, and everything was there, and they created, there was nothing they couldn't do. Remember, nothing they planned was impossible. Nothing. This is before the flood. Oh, rubbish. Yes, it was. And so Mizraim, they believed there was 3 lots of mapping before the Ice Age, because the Ice Age started straight after the flood. One only Ice Age. I've done this study and the kids love it, and I might do it next year. It's extremely interesting. There was one Ice Age caused by the flood. Unless there's a worldwide flood, we'll never have another Ice Age. It set up the conditions. So there was 3, they mapped it straight after about 200 years, they believe. They settled around where the ark was. And so Mizraim, his name meant he was grandson to delineate, draw up a plan. Peleg would have done the one during the Ice Age. He was a grandson, and his name meant in the day the earth was surveyed. And Almadad, he was grandson of Shem. His name means inventor of geometry. These people were brilliant. They could map the stars. There's nothing they didn't know. And so the Reese Peary map, that's in this one, it's 1530, but it goes back to all the old maps. And the maps today aren't totally accurate. And Antarctica and the Arctic had incredible cities on them. The Antarctic had the Rainbow City. It was beautiful. Glass, they had glass that could move. They had everything. You read the back of this book from less than halfway, and then Jonathan gives all the lists of the things they found in all countries. And it is mind-boggling. If anyone wants to borrow this book, they can. They can get a copy. It is mind-boggling, Dead Man's Secrets. And so down the bottom there, high in the mountains of Ghana in 1799, the ancestors told when the great waters came, men came round in canoes, and the mountains were so soft they put their signatures and different things, and they settled later. They set hard later, because after the flood, not all the water rushed back to the sea straight away. And see, the Ice Age, it lasted for 500 years to build up and 200 years to melt. So a lot of the travelling, that's where I was stuck. It took me ages to work that out. Did they spread out before the Tower of Babel or after? And as I've searched, and videos just pop up that I need, it's quite incredible. Like the videos, and I have worked out that they spread out after about 200 years. They started mapping the whole world. And why do you think they need to map it? Because they realised they needed power. See, that's from when Adam and Eve, and then they increased greatly, but only lasted 1,500 years before God was sorry he had even made them. That's pretty sad. That's how corrupt and evil they became. And he washed them away, and then he's going to start again. So they had 120 years. They knew that the earth was going to be destroyed, so they had 120 years to collect everything, to gather everything, but they didn't have libraries or books. They had their brain, their computer was in their brain. Everything, they didn't have books back right in the beginning. So they had to collect all this knowledge, and before the flood they realised that the earth was a giant energy thing. And imagine the electricity and the energy they'd need for all the buildings. Cain built the first city. That's just after Adam and Eve. It wasn't a little hovel, it was a great big city. And Antarctica all around there, when the Ice Age was on, the Caribbean, people liked to live beneath, near the sea, so people were building near the coast all over. The earth now is a lot smaller. We have a lot smaller earth and 70% water. Back before they flood, they had most earth and only a bit of water. So they built beside it, and when the ice started to melt, the cities went underwater. So that's why you hear about Atlantis and those places. Here is the Antarctic, and they mapped it before there was any ice. Archaeologists now won't believe that. No way. They knew everything, and the maps they have today are not near as good. They have to go back to the old maps. 6 generations, they built cities, played complex musical instruments, smelt metals. They surpassed us. And now, Angelo, I wasn't going to show, this is the first ancient Egypt, not this ancient Egypt up here. That's the biggest thing that blew me. There was an incredible civilization well before ancient Egypt. This is the first one after the flood, a couple of 100 years after the flood.
Ancient Egypt invites us to reconsider the narrative of human progress and the linear model of technological evolution. It raises profound questions about the transmission of knowledge, the potential for lost technologies, and the remarkable ingenuity of ancient civilizations. In this documentary, we will examine some of the most compelling cases of advanced ancient technology found in Egypt, delving into the evidence of sophisticated engineering, acoustics, and possibly even electricity. The Osirian. The Osirian, a monumental ancient structure in Abydos, approximately 350 miles south of the Great Pyramid of Giza, remains a subject of profound mystery and debate. Its architectural sophistication and unique characteristics have led some to speculate that it might be the product of a much older, advanced ancient civilization possessing technology far beyond what is traditionally attributed to the Egyptians of the Pharaonic era. One of the first puzzles the Osirian poses is its architectural design, which deviates significantly from the typical temple structure found in ancient Egypt. Unlike the linear, rectangular layout common to most Egyptian temples, the Osirian features a complex, L-shaped configuration. This anomaly raises questions about the intentions behind its design and construction. Further complicating matters is the Osirians' relationship with the Temple of Seti I, as it appears to predate the latter, suggesting it was a significant site long before Seti I decided to build his temple adjacent to it. The sheer scale of the Osirian is breathtaking. Massive rose granite blocks, some weighing 100 tons, form the core of this structure. These colossal stones were quarried from Aswan, located a staggering 200 miles away. The logistical challenges involved in moving these massive blocks across such distances, only to be placed in a desert location several miles from the Nile, are monumental. The transportation and placement of these enormous blocks defy the capabilities attributed to ancient Egyptians. The question then arises, how were these gigantic stones moved and precisely placed without any known evidence of advanced machinery? The architecture of the Osirian further fuels this enigma. The site, featuring a complex, double-layered roofing system and about a dozen chambers, showcases a level of architectural sophistication that seems out of reach for a civilization equipped with primitive tools. Such complexity, particularly the interlocking wedges and precision in stacking the massive blocks, suggests a level of engineering knowledge not typically associated with ancient Egypt. The use of granite, a material far more challenging to work with than the more commonly used limestone, indicates a technological prowess that the ancient Egyptians, as far as historical records show, did not possess. Another mystery of the site is that it lacks any Egyptian hieroglyphs, arts, or artifacts. Absolutely nothing can link this site to the ancient Egyptians. All throughout the history of Egypt, temples and monuments built by the Egyptians were regularly renovated, and with each renovation, additional artworks and hieroglyphs were added. Yet in the Osirian, we don't see anything like that. Furthermore, the Osirian's subterranean layout is highly unusual for Egyptian temple architecture. It is situated 15 feet below the ground level, a feature that is both unique and puzzling. Some researchers propose that this could be due to the temple being much older than the surrounding structures, possibly predating the sands and soil that have accumulated over millennia.
And what they have found there too, that's puzzled them, are watermarks on the Sphinx and all of that, and they can't work that out. That is from the Ice Age, because during the Ice Age, around the Earth, I'll get to that. Oh, first of all, they had to map, and then they realised they needed power, lots of power. So they must have taken all that knowledge with them, and they had to spread out across the world. So they had already mapped it, and they had to go right around the world and realign everything. They realised the electricity came from the earth and from Menhurs, and it was so complicated. I had to read it. I'm not a geologist. The science was well beyond me, but they got the power from the atmosphere and from the earth, and they had to realign it. And during the flood, it was all messed up, these lines. And there were some men in England, they were just standing overlooking this village one day, and they suddenly saw all the spires in the churches and all the things. They realised they were all in straight lines and they all lined up. and you look in America, and all around the world, things lined up. And then they realised they started mapping the whole of Europe, and everywhere they found either mounds or pyramids or sacred temples or sacred wells or all sorts of things, and these were points to get the electricity, because the first job they had to power the world. That was the first job. And see, there was temples, pillars, rocking stones, circles, crosses, pyramids, tunnels and platforms, and they started frantically building. See, you'll see these, and people wondered what they were. Well, that was to get the electricity, store it, and they used to have long roads. Some of them, I found at Angkor Wat, were equivalent to 3 roads. They went for hundreds of miles. Angkor Wat, they have only just studied it in 2015, 10 years ago, and what they have found there has blown their mind. Remember, if you leave a civilization or a town, if everyone was washed away, disappeared from Wauchope and Port around, everyone, you just disappeared, and someone came back in 1,000 years, what would be left? The only thing that'd be left is anything built of stone. Everything else, all the bricks would have crumbled, all the papers, all the steel, any metal would have rotted away. Everything disappears except stone, and that's where the Stone Age came from. Stone, they thought these people were old-fashioned Stone Age. No, they were old, that's all that was left. So a lot of these civilizations, they've been covered with the jungles. People disappeared, we don't know why, and this is all around the world. They're those, look at the stones they moved. This is well before. They had certain powers, and they had pyramids. You want to see pyramids? Sicily, I'll come back to this one. There's pyramids, all different shapes, all over the world. The Bosnian, Cambodia, United States, Canary Island, sand, Honduras. They had circles, had those, all to do with the electric. Even in the Antarctic they had pyramids. Because remember, it was beautiful in the Ice Age that only, I'll go back. In the Ice Age, if you lived near the waters were like a swimming warm bath, because all the volcanoes and the heat. So there was, and the sky was full for about 50,000 volcanoes, so it sent all this stuff into the atmosphere. So there were no deserts, because it's just after the flood. So it was lush and green in the centre of Australia and around the equator. I'll just find the one. Oh, this is the Bosnian one. Now that was found recently, and no way was the Bosnian pyramid. It was a natural formation. And when they built, they knew all about the sun, moon, stars, everything. Everything was lined up, everything. I'll come back then. Everything, they knew geometry. With God, when he created, everything is in order. You look, even our face, it's part of that natural order, the Fibonacci numbers. Our body, if you lined up a whole group of women, the navel to the floor is all the special measurement. Noah's Ark had all the measurements, everything around the earth. God did that special golden, Wayne, what is it, the golden? Ratio. Golden ratio, yes. See, you start with a tiny little one, the golden ratio. I'm just flying through it, but everything in art, the Mona Lisa, everything. So kids, when you do geometry, don't think it's boring. It's incredibly interesting. Have a look for the Mandelbrot numbers, the patterns it forms. It's from the mind of God. So you could imagine heaven is going to be everything lined up. And when they built the Bosnian pyramid, it is larger than the Egyptian one. Well, the Egyptian architect, not it, my brain is so tired. The Egyptian main guy, he came out and he didn't even want them to dig in the Bosnian pyramid. He said they weren't allowed to. It was only a natural formation. And he's way over in Egypt. And archaeologists, that's what I was trying, from all over the world didn't want them to dig because it was bigger than the Egyptian one and it lined up with the others. They were furious. Look at all the mass that lines up, everything. And they've discovered there's all tunnels under all the pyramids. They need water. And when people go into the Bosnian pyramid, they're allowed to go there now. They said when they walk through the water and when they spend time there, they're healed of all sorts of things, whether that's legit or magical or I don't know. I haven't gone into that, but it's quite incredible. People are coming from all around the world. And they covered the pyramids, especially the Egyptian one, with sandstone and then gold at the top, and that helped generate the electricity. That's on the videos, it's incredible, and Tesla had worked all that out. It's a giant energy thing. He even put out a book, it's in the universities now, so that one's not crazy. It's I'd never heard of it. I thought they were totally bonkers, but they're all over the world. And they're even in Australia, but all the Australian ones are natural formations, of course. They're up in Brisbane, they're near Penrith, they're everywhere, but they're natural formations, of course they've got to be. And all the things when you read through this, the things that are in Australia, and the lines in Australia are called, I've forgotten that one, the Aboriginals, they used to follow them and they would move with the cycle of the moon, and they said they got better growth. They understood all that, and they followed them. I'm only not even scratching the surface, what's there to be found. The energy springs. And I'll put that saying, and wow, Babel, they built a great big tower. It was the centre, world control. Before that, they had spread out the civilizations, and we knew because the Cherokee Indians said that these people came in boats, not during the Ice Age, before the Ice, they came in boats and they often married the women. And they thought, bunkum, that's not true. And they came from Israel, Phoenicia, all these different countries. This is not long after flood. Across the dangerous oceans? No, not possible. So just recently, they had done DNA tests of the Cherokee Indians, and they have found everything they said was true. There's all these different DNA. They did travel across, and they could go through those strong oceans. They had incredible boats. The Phoenicians were terrific. They could do anything. Nothing was impossible. They could fly. They could go to Mars. And these super cultures. And it wasn't only Egypt. This one is blowing people away, Göbekli Tepe, and guess where it is? Right near Noah's Ark. Wow. Not the Noah's Ark that was popular a few years ago, higher up. The one, I don't know whether I'm game to say it, that Ron Wyatt found, but you can't say that name. And he didn't find it, aeroplanes had found it, they had studied it, but it was level with the ground, and it could easily be a natural formation. And so when he saw it, he said, it needs to be lifted up. We need an earthquake. We need something so we can see it. So he went home to America. A few days later, he heard on the news there was an earthquake in Turkey. But the strange thing was, it was on the news, the sky went silver, a real silvery colour. So everyone in the village, further up the village of 8, everyone came out of their houses to see this strange silver sky. And so when the earthquake happened, no one got damaged if their houses shook. And it happened near the ark, lifted it up, the earth at the side, it exposed it, and now they are able to look at it better. And the most recent thing I found out, they want to, the other day, the latest report, they want to put cameras down inside. They want to bore down and get specimens, and they can do it. They have far more advanced resivity scans now. They know it's a boat-shaped. They know it has a long corridor. They know it has all the different cages in it. But now they are able to do it properly with far more advanced. That's going to happen soon. I looked at that the other day. And this Göbekli Tepe, there's also Göbekli Tepe, whatever it is, Kara Tepe, and there's another one. And they were ancient temples, and they were suddenly just covered up and left. And Pastor David sent me an article the other day that the archaeologists, but from Smithsonian Institute, unfortunately, went to Göbekli Tepe and near where the ark is, and they dug and they found the oldest artefacts and pottery in the world. But unfortunately, they will probably go into one of the 60 million boxes under Smithsonian Institute for exhibits that are too shocking for the population, because the world is entrenched in evolution and you can't have this sort of thing found. It's impossible, you can't do it. There is the Ice Age. See, when the Ice Age was on, those greener parts, they had the ice. These browner parts in the middle, they were lush jungles. And notice where the super civilizations, what surprised me, I knew about the Andes and the Inca and all of those, but I didn't know India and the Hindus and the Pakistan. They were unbelievable. I'd never heard of Mohenjo-Daro. It was a magnificent city, and they're all along there except the one down the side of South America. These were super cultures. See, there's the Ice Age. That's when it fully was at its most. After the flood, the cities hatched out of nowhere. These were Egypt, Sumeria, Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, Maya, and Northwest Europe, all at the same time. And this popped up. This is a bit over the top, but there's some of this that's interesting. The one down the bottom, the Coral Castle, I had studied that, and that was fascinating, because that man had gone and had it up the Tibetan monks and studied how they got those big blocks. You know, the 100, the 1,000-ton one. How did they carve those? How did they put them up on the top of mountains? They did it with sound, these big trumpets and that. Oh, yeah, but they did. We can't prove it, but they're there. they did it. So he came home and he was crippled and he was old, and so he decided to build a palace. But he only built it at night time and where people couldn't see him, and he had a workshop, and he every day would appear these coral stones, and he built this palace. Each one was over a ton, all these rocks, and he wouldn't tell anyone how he did it. And when he died, they found this musty little office with all this machinery and all this thing, and then they had to fix one that fell over, and it took 2 huge machines to lift it. And he was crippled and old. He did it by sound. See the brown anti-gravity device? You'll see a lot of the ones there in Egypt, and they say they're spaceships. No, they're the aeroplanes they flew around in against gravity. And there is Tesla. He knew all about the free energy, and if Chris Bowen would study it, we might get some free energy and get our country back. And there's some fascinating things there. Here's the blocks. How did they get them up there? They're everywhere. They just moved up. One man saw a demonstration. They played these instruments, they made this noise, and then the blocks just went up one at a time. And see, all around the world, they defied earthquakes. Peru and that. These people were brilliant, but they're all over the earth. So it wasn't one civilization. And they had, see those marks in the rock? They knew where you could get special weeds, crumple them up, get the juice out of them, rub them on the rocks, and then they were soft like putty. And then they'd set hard again. Cool. See? Imagine if we could do that. They did it. Look at the blocks, perfectly cut if you get up close. Absolutely perfect. They can't, and on the videos they keep saying, how did they do it with primitive tools? And I keep yelling at the computer. They didn't have primitive tools. And all of these buildings, they see these great big marks. And they thought, how did they do those with primitive tools? Go down to the Snowy River, go into their tunnels, and the big machines that are cutting the tunnels cut the same marks. They had the same machines as they did in the Snowy. They're not silly. Look, how'd they move that? 1,500 tonne. Look. See, Angkor Wat, they've only just discovered it recently, so the archaeologists said, oh, that was in 1500. No, it wasn't. They had the same marks as ancient Egypt and Bolivia. No, they don't want the archaeologists do everything in their power to stop these discoveries. Look at that, look at Angkor Wat, that's one of their dams. That's how many pyramids you could fit in that dam. That's just one of them. They stored the water from the monsoons. Look at that, the mounds and the things they created. Look at the shapes. Unbelievable. I've only learnt this 2 days ago. See, the secret of how they moved it is the geometric placement of the musical instruments in relation to the stones to be levitated and the harmonic tuning of the drums and trumpets. That's there it is. We're not that clever. See, there was a panel over this dropped in the pyramids, and so they didn't want this seen. See, they had aeroplanes and helicopters and everything, ancient Egypt. See, they used to fly everywhere. They thought that was a model, but they've discovered that's a perfect shape. So they knew all these cities were common because of the language, science, anthropology, a whole lot. They could do pottery. This first Egypt was 1/40th of an inch. I thought ancient Egypt was incredible. When you go there in the museum, it is mind-boggling, but this is far more mind-boggling. This is way back after the flood, way back. And the Incas and the Aztecs, this was Kelly, you remember this? She helped me with this. The dinosaurs. How come they knew all about dinosaurs when our illustrious men only found about it in 1985, I think, how they looked. They knew, they carved them on their funeral stones. They knew what they had pictures of heart transplants, brain operations, everything. This is way, way back. There's that little spider, see the green? This is on the Nazca Plain, and they've only discovered in the last 30 years. They did that little spider is microscopic, and you can only see it under a microscope back in the Amazon, and it has its leg in a certain place when it copulates, and they put it on the plane, carved it. They only discovered it when if you went up in a helicopter or a balloon, and they found either end this silk, finer than the silk on the balloons, and where fire was. Here's a laser scan. They haven't done all the jungles in the world to have a look what's under. And another thing, under all these buildings, they had cities and there's those marks. They're under all the underground. I didn't know there's cities and tunnels all around the world, underground. They go from Europe under the Pacific Ocean to America. They go for miles. Look at them. They're cities carved out. Turkey is covered with them. They're like ants' nests. That's what they're like. We don't know. We're feeble, Ellen White said. Amazing finds in Australia. The Aborigines may have been here, but all people came. There's pyramids, Egyptians, Phoenicians, Assyrians, they all came to Australia. Lida, look, that hasn't been done. Peru. Everywhere. And when you learn about this, see that sun, there's straight and crooked rays. That means it's pagan, straight and crooked. We learnt when James Arabida, when I first became an Adventist, we studied and studied and studied it, and he was killed for doing that because you don't expose that. He had a couple of death threats and he was finally killed from exposing about a lot that was going on. The Spanish came and they destroyed, that's just in a short period. The conquerors came and they destroyed everything. That's why we know so little. There is Timbuktu. I didn't think I was that ignorant. I thought Timbuktu was out the back of Bourke. My dad used to say, I'll go to Timbuktu. I just thought it was just out in the bush somewhere. I had no idea it was the biggest city and the most gold in the world. In Africa, and it had the biggest library in the world. And it is the most amazing place, and I never even knew. Timbuktu, and see they came and destroyed their library. See, and so after all of this, we're up to those civilizations, and they spread out after the Tower of Babel, and what do people do? They fight. And this is some of the evidence. The earth shook, scorched by the terrible violent heat of the weapons. Corpses were so burnt they were no longer recognisable. Hair and nail. Thousands of war vehicles. There was atomic warfare right across. Lots. of civilizations. That's Sanskrit text. Mohenjo-Daro was virtually wiped out. And here are some of the places. Canada. Here is the evidence. It should be a greeny colour, tritonite glass. Here's some of the places that had atomic warfare. Check it out. There it is, evidence of glass. So because, see, when they spread out, these are the main civilizations. In brown, and the Arctic and Antarctic and Caribbean got wiped out with the Ice Age. The Antarctica and the Arctic, they got wiped out because of all the snow and the ice, and the Caribbean got wiped out, was flooded. And the other places, they were destroyed with atomic warfare, and that's where, agriculture city turned up, started. There's a natural formation. That's a beauty, under the Caribbean. There's another, this is the Bimini Road, that's natural. That's a natural formation under the Caribbean. And this is the cavemen, that's how they dress, one of the things. They didn't live in caves. They used those for art. They had incredible, they were just unbelievable. They could do ones. So then we get to the known history. We go along and we get to Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, and knowledge. When they wiped them out with atomic warfare, they wiped a lot of the civilizations, and they could keep going for a while, but a lot of their tools, they didn't have the technicians to mend them, and they slowly declined. There weren't people to fix them up. They didn't have all the gear. It was just devastating, the atomic warfare, and that's what humans do. And each time that something is found, when I'm watching these videos, each time that something is found, the archaeologists scream blue murder. No, that's not right. The Bosnian pyramid was one of the worst. And under Egypt, there are all these tunnels, there are cities, there's everything. Because the pyramids, if you look when Moses was there, they had the slaves, and they added straw and they made bricks. They didn't have the huge big ones. Those were made by a far more ancient civilization. Took me a while to get my head around it. But the world, it is quite incredible. I made this because I'm used to teaching kids, and you do charts and you have visuals. And I thought some class might like to put it up and study it. I've only scratched the surface, not even scratched it. And I got very, very sad when I was doing this. Sometimes I'd just sit at my table for ages just thinking of how horrible humanity had got. And when I think of Ellen White, last time we did it with the children, about kindness. If we were kind, caring Christians, there would be 100 conversions where there's now 1. And I found the reaction of people. And I thought, we are the only ones that Adventists can stand up and say, hang on, they were brilliant at the beginning, absolutely brilliant at the beginning, and then we have slowly gone downhill. But at the end, we are starting to get the technician back again. It mightn't be the same. They had computers, they had things. They're probably not exactly as we had them. But we're talking about flying to the moon, we're doing this. But as soon as someone finds something, when they found the Bosnian pyramid, you had no idea how they carried on. and they said it's a gatekeeping profession, and if you're not part of their boys' club and you have been trained in that university, you don't know. And they weren't accepted, their views weren't accepted. And I went through, and that wasn't once. As I was studying, I watched hundreds of videos, and the same thing happened over and over again. The moment someone found something, all the clever ones came out and said, no, it's not true, they don't want to do it. And I thought, well, why aren't Adventists standing up? Well, Jonathan Gray stood up. He thought Ron Wyatt had totally lost his marbles, as did everyone. So he decided to go and study and go and visit Ron Wyatt and see the sites. And he found out, lo and behold, it was true. And he had listed all these things that he found. And he studied, and he was a pastor, and he got pushed out of the church. We can't upset the paradigm, evolution. I don't know why. And he kept studying. And his wife's testimony, Josephine, I talked to her on the phone, and I could tell she was the most beautiful lady just from talking. She kept crying on the phone. It was after he died. And she said, I can't stand it how people lie all the time. Adventists lie. Pastors, they're all lying. And I thought, yeah, I found that's normal. That's what human beings are like. So for his effort, he was going round the world speaking about this, and there was orders put out to kill him from the hierarchy. And unless an angel had intervened, he was bashed with big lumps of wood across the back and the head. If an angel hadn't intervened, he would be dead. I couldn't believe it. I just sat there reading the book, and I thought, I can't believe this. So I rang up a friend and I said, I can't believe this, but it's in a book, and if you write things like that, there's defamation laws. You name the people, you can go to jail. He said, not if Christians don't want to take their brother to court, nothing happens. He said, I was there with him. I got him onto the plane, got him to Darwin, and the doctor said, an angel must have saved you. You shouldn't be alive. So I can understand why you don't stand up. And then I have spent hours watching the videos, and I thought, now I know why Ron Wyatt. He didn't find one thing, he found the supernatural, and all of them, well, you could imagine, everyone thought he was a lunatic. There's he was a Jewish rabbi. He thought he was the maddest person he'd ever seen, but he wanted to meet him, so he went and asked could he spend a week, come to his house, and he thought, what? So he went and stayed a week with him and had a look at all these things and talked. So then he decided to sell up everything he had and went with him. And he now has a big tourist thing over in the Middle East. But the people that looked, and I thought, no wonder if he found it. And he said the biggest problem, people don't believe in miracles like they used to. And I thought, when I first came into the church, we had missionaries and there were real miracles. Like boats had run out of petrol, all sorts of, there were incredible miracles. I don't have a problem believing this because I've had miracles happen. The $1 million one, that was a good one when I prayed. If God wanted me to go that way, touch someone's heart and give me the $1 million. and the man came with $1 million because his heart was touched with David's story. It was mind-blowing, but there were so many others. When my son, he was very bright, the late one, and he got onto methadone, and I begged the doctor not to put him on, but I was just a mother, what would I know? I said, they lie. They just can't lie straight in bed. And he gave him methadone. He wasn't even a heroin addict. And of course, lucky this girl felt God tell her to go to his flat. She went to his flat after, and his lips were blue and his fingernails were blue. And she frantically broke in, got him in the car and rushed him to hospital, and the doctor rang me at school and said, I think I've killed your son. I didn't listen to you. I thought you're just a mum. What would you know? So I had to go up to the hospital. I had to keep slapping his face because if he went to sleep, he'd die. And they injected him with Narcan to cover what they'd put in him. And he said he had to keep giving him Narcan. And he said to me, I'm really sorry, Miss McKay, your son will have permanent brain damage. I didn't listen to you. I shouldn't have given him that stuff. And if he goes to sleep, he will die. So I was there till 11 o'clock at night, slapping his face, praying, trying to keep him awake. And in the end, I couldn't stay awake any longer. And I said, I've got to go home. So I went home. And next morning, the doctor rang me, come quickly. I went up to the hospital and he said, what church do you go to? I said, the Seventh-day Adventist. He said, your son is perfectly normal. This should not have happened. This is a miracle. He's totally normal. And he said, so I believe in your church. And I couldn't believe it. But that was just one, there were heaps. So what I'm going to do, I have these packages for the children. For the eldest, Kelly and Brandon will give these out after we've finished, and one of these for the family, and then for those who just are in a family, even if you're one person, I have one of these for you, so you can look further. And if you want to look up those, be careful, some of them are real new age. Ask God to help you when to knock it off. And if you want any more, I was going to hopefully do an afternoon program this afternoon, but my brain is just so scrambled and tired, and I haven't slept much this week because as I do this, I get so excited about what I'm learning and I can't sleep. I have probably really rattled your brains, but there's stuff, and the young people, I hope you can tell your friends, we did not come from monkeys. The world is only 6,000 years old. We will be in heaven for 7,000, and it is going to be the most amazing place. You just cannot believe how marvellous. And no one will tell lies, and no one will put people down, and no one will be corrupt, and everyone will love each other and will have kind, caring Christians, and it's going to be incredible. Yeah. So thank you. I know that was hard to sit through. Those who would like to stay for lunch, as I said, I was going to have an afternoon, but I just physically can't. It's hard enough to remember the words now, and